Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the last session on global outreach. I'm Bernie Longboy. I'm head of outreach and partnerships for CS50. And I have to tell you, I'm very excited today because I get to finally share a little bit about what I do behind the scenes, all about outreach. We also have a very special guest who will be presenting with me today, my good friend, but also a good friend of CS50, Maya Nelson, and I will let her introduce herself briefly, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Bernie. Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. I am Maya Nelson. I'm the head of school at Jakarta Intercultural School in Jakarta, Indonesia. Jakarta Intercultural School has 2,200 students from pre-K through grade 12. We're an international school serving the expatriate and Indonesian nationals, and we're so pleased to have had the honor of partnering with CS50 Harvard during the last 2 years. Thank you.
So a little bit about CS50. As you've all heard today, CS50 is the Intro to Computer Science course at Harvard College. It's also one of the largest courses here at the college. And also it's taught across many platforms. As you can see from the numbers here, these are just some enrollment numbers in the given year. So at the Harvard Extension School, it's also one of the largest courses. We also teach CS50 at Yale University, so we have a version of it down in New Haven. And we also teach CS50 at Harvard Law School and Harvard Business School. However, it's a bit more programming light, but we believe that students graduating from these two programs should still have some understanding of computer science principles. One of the great and unique things about CS50 is we have a robust community of educators and learners, 1.8 million followers on YouTube. And most recently, 5.8 million students took the course on edX, the MOOC joint venture between Harvard and MIT. Our belief, our philosophy at CS50, we believe that quality CS education should be available to all. It's not just for the incoming 1,600 students to Harvard College. So you all have seen this slide before as well in David's presentation and Yulia's presentation. So in 2007, all our courses were made available on OpenCourseWare. So again, accessible to all. So I just want to see a show of emoji hands here. How many of you have taken 2 courses of these courses here? Just show a little wave of hands here. Anyone? You can do your little emoji hands. There you go. All right. How about 3 or more courses? Wow, okay, so we see 3. 4 or more courses. Next year we'll have to do a little, maybe little prize for whoever has taken the most courses. All righty, but now I want to turn it back over to Maya because I'm sure you guys are all interested in hearing about the start, the evolution of this program. How did this program come to be? Thanks, Maya.
Thank you, Bernie. So as an international school, what we always look at is how can we give back to the country that we are in? How can we support the education of our colleagues, of other educators throughout our country as well as globally? In addition, there had been a lot of conversation about what types of content areas needed to be improved or enhanced, what types of professional development educators needed in Indonesia. And this led to evolving conversations between Bernie and I, between Dr. Malin and us, to see what could we do with outreach throughout the world that would benefit not only the teachers, but our school, students globally, as well as, of course, the CS50 professionals. That started a conversation that ended up in the Ministry of Education's office in Indonesia. And we were so thankful that the Ministry of Education was very open to this and was indeed as well looking for ways that they could enhance their understanding of computer science in both high schools as well as universities. And in this conversation and the involvement of the program, we looked at what could be done between our 3 organizations to support all educators throughout the region. So these conversations took several months. It took several months of being able to figure out who could do what part, what are the responsibilities of each, and what do we need to do in terms of our action step and processes. And so it began. Of course, first and foremost was publicity marketing, and that came twofold. It wasn't just publicity marketing about what we were doing. That was really secondary. What we needed to do is get the word out to educators throughout the country, throughout Indonesia, which is a very vast and large country, to opportunity to be able to learn and grow in this specific content area, and in support of understanding how to teach computer science in the schools. This is the piece that was really special that Dr. Malin and his fellow teachers gave in support of our educators in Indonesia. It wasn't just being able to take the class that many of you have taken online, but it was also being able to understand, how do you teach this content area to others? How do you engage in that conversation with the students in your classroom so that they can continue to grow in their understanding of computer science and how this is applicable to them and globally. And so in the steps, the Ministry of Education professionals supported us in being able to market this throughout public schools throughout the region. And from that, applications started coming in. Of course, the application process was very reliant on MOE, the Ministry of Education, being able to find the right areas that needed to be ascertained and aggregated. There was an application form, there were essays, there were interviews with each person, there were interviews with the supervisors, the principals, or the heads of the schools. There was also information in regards to CS50 and how the lecture format was. And very critical is they needed to have a basic understanding of English proficiency so that they could learn content in the English medium. All of these pieces took several months. And in the first year, this is now into the third year, in the first year that we did this, we had several hundred applications, almost 500, and 150 students were chosen out of this. That selection process came from the Ministry of Education, then went to our colleagues and professionals at CS50, who gave the final approval of those who were chosen. In addition to all of this, logistics needed to be had. Logistics about how do these classes form throughout the world? Do the teachers have the logistics, the laptop, the internet access, all of those pieces so that they could join with the professionals teaching this from Cambridge or Boston? And that information was shared, and schools in various locations in Indonesia supported what needed to happen so that the learning could happen. So Indonesia is vast. From one side to the other, it is as wide as the United States. And we were so lucky that there were professional educators from throughout the country that were interested in this. We had people all the way from Aceh, which is one side of the country, to Papua New Guinea. We had a large majority of teachers that came from Java Island, which is where Jakarta existed. But no matter where they were located, what they needed is access to internet. They needed to have a laptop. They needed to have ability to be able to navigate all the different platforms and enough bandwidth for this. And then, of course, what we had really hoped is for them not to be able to only engage learning online, but also to be able to eventually meet everyone. Let's take a look a little bit about what this was like.
This is that ice cold Michelle fight for that white gold. This one for them hood girls, them good girls, straight masterpieces. Stylin', wildin', living it up in the city. Got Chuck's on with Saint Laurent. Gotta kiss myself, I'm so pretty. I'm too hot. Call the police and the fireman. I'm too hot. Make a dragon wanna retire, man. I'm too hot. Say my name, you know who I am. I'm too hot. And my band bought that money. Break it down. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Girls hit you, hallelujah. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Cause Uptown Funk don't give it to you. Saturday just watch. Don't believe me, just watch. Don't believe me, just watch. Hey, 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 oh! Come on. Say what?
It was really a remarkable time, and we're so pleased that we can continue to offer this educational opportunity to our Indonesian colleagues, our educators throughout the country, really because of this wonderful partnership and the work of Dr. Malin and his group of professionals. So, logistics are always a big part of when you plan something as extensive as this. And there were logistics both within the school as well as externally with the Ministry of Education and the CS50 group. And let me talk to you a little bit about both sides of it. Within the school, what we knew is we wanted to culminate the whole experience with an in-person workshop or in-person class opportunity. And so what our hope was, of course, is to have Dr. Malin join us in Indonesia. Not only is he famous and an engaging and wonderful educator and so supportive of the knowledge that people around the world have gained because of expertise, but people wanted to see him in person so that they could really I think, solidify this whole experience. And so we wanted to make that happen. The opportunities that came with that, of course, was also that our school, as a K-12 school, our high school students were very aware of Dr. Malin and his work, as well as Harvard University, and they wanted to be able to see and learn a little bit on the sides as well. So having a plan to have the group of professionals from Boston come join us in Indonesia was put into motion, and we worked through all elements of this, from what are the pieces that we need to do to have a workshop, what type of an environment is most beneficial for teaching and learning. How do we pay for this? That was a big question at the beginning, and we were delighted that we had sponsorship from various American-Indonesian partnership organizations that supported this endeavor and really believed in the importance of this, so that we could upscale students in schools and so that students in Indonesia would know that computer science is a viable and important profession to go into, and to increase the understanding, of course, of educators. We are very fortunate at GIST that we have facilities of every type. And so we were able to block out classrooms and a theater for an opening ceremony and a lecture hall for some of the larger classes that CS50 put together. With this as well, there was a travel schedule of not only just our CS50 professionals who were coming to Indonesia and flying across the world, but also the students from all over Indonesia. And this is where the Ministry of Education came in and supported. So what we gave as an opportunity, and through funding from the Ministry of Education, all 150 teachers in the first year, and then 272 in the second year, were able to travel to Jakarta and were able to participate in person into this live workshop experience on the GIST campus. The schedule was made so that it happened towards the end of the week on a Friday and Saturday, and the students from Indonesia all came in on Thursday so that they could join us for all festivities, all lectures, all keynotes. And then, of course, they left by the end of Sunday. As well, our colleagues from Harvard joined us a little bit earlier in the week because of jet lag. And then they came in and worked with us on our campus. And we were very privileged as an international school to also have a little bit of expertise shared with us with our own students on Friday before all of the other engagements happened. There were social connections that we wanted to ensure were real and important for everyone, all the different constituents. Again, this is about connections. It's about 3 different organizations coming together in the well-being and support of education globally. And we knew that the connections and the relationships that we were building were important, not only for today, but also for the future, for us to be able to plan for the future, for our students to learn from us, that having global engagements and having connections were so critical in this world today. Then last, of course, it's always important to recognize the people who made this happen. And this is not something that one person did. This is something that took an enormous amount of collective wisdom, a collective dedication and time and responsibilities and agency so that everyone could work for the well-being of an educational endeavor. And both years that we did this, we had a large presentation where we invited dignitaries, we invited people who helped sponsor this. The first year we did this on our campus, on our GIST campus. The second year we were privileged to be hosted at the Ministry of Education Center in Jakarta. And then again, of course, we were so honored to have Dr. Malin speak to us at both of these sessions, as well as the Minister of Education, Pat Nadim, and many other important professionals who supported this endeavor.
So what did the course look like? So in the initial meeting with the Ministry of Education, one of their key requests was for the course to resemble the fall college course as closely as possible. So what did this mean exactly? So the fall college course is a 10-week course. So for us, what we did with the Indonesian teachers is we slightly customized their program. So the course started in October and ended the first week in March with the submission of their final project. And really, we were able to spend more time, extend the course, and spend more time on some of the more challenging modules and lectures that David did. So for example, for arrays, they had 2 weeks to do it versus in the college where it would be only 1 week. So some of the other things that they did that replicated the college model was also the use of teaching fellows. So at Harvard College, we have what's called teaching fellows, or TFs, and they help support David and the rest of the TFs, the preceptors, Yulia and formerly Carter, with the course. So how it works is that the students, the teachers, and we use that interchangeably, by the way, so the Indonesian teachers were the students, obviously, of this course. So they attend the sections. After the lecture, they meet in their sections regularly with their teaching fellow, and it's a smaller cohort of students. So for cohort 2, it was about, 18 to 20 students per cohort. The material for each of the sections is standardized, so the TFs can tweak it according to their teaching style and personality. Attendance is required. It's part of the grade, so sections, they do attend sections. Attendance is there, and it is part of their grade. But again, all done synchronously through Zoom. And they also have the office hours, which is also another part of the course that they're able to do. So I'm going to go back here. And I do want to do a shout out really quickly. We have actually one of our TFs, one of our teaching fellows from the Indonesian course here with us for the workshop, Tim Sampson. Can we unmute Tim? And maybe, Tim, if you could say a brief introduction and maybe a line about being a teaching fellow for the Indonesian course.
Yeah, sure. Hey, hi, Bernie. Hi, Maya. Hi, everybody. My name is Tim Sampson. I teach in high school at AP Computer Science Principles and use a CS50 curriculum. And I had the opportunity last year to also be a TF for teachers CS50 in Indonesia. It was a fantastic experience. The students were very dedicated and they were really involved in class activities. It's really, really wonderful to be a part of. Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. And so one of the great things that we also had for this cohort too was one of the previous students. So from cohort 1, Nima, who's obviously Indonesian local teacher, was able to be one of our TFs this year and was able to come and join us as one of the consultants and basically to present at the educator workshop at GIST in March. So we were very excited about that. And again, just bringing continuity to the program, right? And how inspiring for the teachers to see one of their, quote unquote, their own people doing the TFing and also participating as a consultant. Okay. So obviously some of the other things that the teachers were exposed to were the tools. So this is part of what they get in the course in the fall. So the teachers had all access to CS50 Dev. As you guys already know, it's the programming environment. It's free as long as there's an internet browser. They have a browser and internet connection. They're able to access that. They also had, obviously you've heard all about our Duck Debugger. So they had access to that 24/7 for further support. Check 50 to see if their code was correct before submitting it, and Style 50 also about format and style before they submit their PSETs. And we also use Gradescope with this course, so they could submit their assignments through Gradescope, and the TFs were able to keep track of their grades and their progress through Gradescope. So the workshop structure, so what did that look like? So Maya was being a bit modest. As we all know, it takes a lot of work to put on an in-person event. And you know, as much as we love this Zoom event and having teachers have access to our workshop, there's nothing like being in person. So all the teachers got to come together finally. So after 6 months of watching David's lectures online, attending synchronous sections with their TFs over Zoom, and multiple office hours, we finally were able to bring everyone together for the in-person workshop. So much like what you're doing today, the 2 days of this workshop, we also did it in Indonesia and held it at GIS. And again, it really did take a lot of work to bring everybody together. And I think for GIS and Maya's role, they were sort of the middle person, if you will, in this, because they were dealing with the MOE and the teachers flying in from all over Indonesia, taking trains and bus, but then also dealing with the staff here in Cambridge coming over, as Maya already pointed out. So dealing with two groups and trying to really work with all our needs and resources and replicating what we do here at GIS. And we have to say that it was amazing, and we were able to do it as you saw from the videos. So one of the big focus for the workshop was really building community and establishing those connections between teachers. How do they take now what they learned in those 6 months, the CS50 course, they have it under their belt, and being able to synthesize that now as teachers, right? And bringing that into practice. So again, adopting and adapting CS50 and bringing it into their own classrooms. Involving teachers again from the previous cohort, like Nima, being able to see her as she was presenting to her teachers. That was also something that was very inspirational for those teachers to see and to aspire to. So practice with pedagogy. So again, unlike what you guys have already seen and done as well, so much of what the experience of the teachers for the 2 days was similar again to this. And so we broke teachers up in groups of 4 to 5 people, again led by Carter, Margaret, who's one of our teaching fellows at a school in New York City, and Yulia. The teachers were placed in groups and asked to look at some of these questions. So I don't know if you guys can read this, but what is the most important part of my job as a teacher? And to really think about, what does that mean? Writing down their reflections, thinking about moving forward, not just, again, as teachers, but teachers now with the CS50 curriculum under their belt. This encouraged teachers to collaborate with each other, reflect on their teaching experiences, because again, many of those who were involved in the course were already established teachers. So what we wanted to do also is validate what they know and their experiences. The grading and feedback. So you guys also covered this in some of the earlier sessions. Really talking about not just what these problem sets look like and how to correct them, but again, broader strategies, how to provide good feedback and support for students' learning. We all know what it's like as a student, right, to have an interest in a particular subject or area, and then for whatever reason not be validated or supportive, and then feel like, you know, this is not something I'm interested in anymore. I don't want to continue in my CS education. So again, here's a picture of Carter teaching us how to implement the Caesar problem set. But again, it was more about how to provide good feedback and support to students' learning. So the takeaways, which again, we hope all of you will take away from today as well, the problem solving As David has already mentioned, Yulia, everyone who talked about the teaching and learning side, CS50 is not just about learning computer science principles. It's also about thinking critically, logically, problem solving, and really learning how to learn. And then, of course, the teaching practices, like I mentioned before, validating already what the teachers know. So many of them have already been in the classroom, in the trenches, as we like to say, know what they're doing. But how do they do that now with this curriculum? And community, as I mentioned before, I think this is one of the great things about CS50, so unique to CS50, having that in person, building those relationships, and really having the teachers be able to continue those conversations. Because remember, so many of them, all they saw were each other online, and then to actually meet up in person was, again, quite something to see.
Of course, from year to year, we had some lessons that we learned and we got better at what we did. And I want to share some of these with you. First and foremost, curriculum. Anytime, and we have this in our international schools as well, when we teach content in a second language, it becomes a little bit difficult for those students who are taking it. What we knew as we moved along is that course materials needed to come in many different formats. Perhaps we could have also done some translations on this, even though our students, the Indonesian teachers, had English proficiency. The content level and the cognitive load for this might have been such that that language barrier made it challenging at moments. As well, what we needed to make sure is that all our students took advantage of the platforms that were delivered for them. The pace of the classes were different. It was intense when they were online synchronously with the fellows at in the United States. And what we needed to ensure is that everyone understood that these were working teachers. And in Indonesia, working teachers have, just like teachers everywhere in the world, they have students in the classroom. They're expected to do things after school. And there's also school on Saturdays in Indonesia. And so that demand sometimes conflicted with the demands of being a student themselves. And then, of course, for our teaching fellows, as they moved along, especially from the first year to the second, understanding more and more about the cultural context, about the backgrounds of their students, about what they were bringing into the classroom, and what their experiences in curriculum and understanding of how they learned was really critical in the growth of being a teacher to these students. So what we needed to do as well is ensure that the teaching fellows were scaffolding the support, that there is space for teachers to work, the students, right? The teachers, the Indonesian teachers who are students, to work with one another in their native language. So collaboration is really a very strong skill set in Indonesia. It is something that they often rely on. They work together to get things done. It's not a society that's based on individual achievement, which also has some implications on how they view curriculum, how they are in the classroom, how they partake in the assignment. So there needed to be space so that people could work with each other in their native language, translate, and even discuss, have that discourse in Bahasa Indonesian. There needed to be an understanding that all the different frameworks that were presented were understood for all the participants. And then something as well that's really important, again, sometimes because of the cultural influences in society and how people were raised, what academic honesty may be in one culture is different than in another culture. In some places, it's very individualistic achievement. In some places, it's about community. And there needed to be very clear parameters and guidance about what academic honesty meant for the CS50 program. Then, of course, there were technology challenges. And the first and foremost, I have to say, is that internet is not totally reliable in all aspects of Indonesia, in all areas of Indonesia. And so many of the students would have to work in their workplace. This is where they took it. They would stay in the school so that they would have internet access, or they would go to places where they had internet access. Not everyone has internet in the homes. It's very different there. And so the unreliable internet connections also made it difficult sometimes to access frameworks and standardized programs that were available for people. And I think that we learned that we needed to ensure that they would download versions for themselves so that if they didn't have internet or internet would would stop for any specific reason. Sometimes it's electrical outages, sometimes it's rain. Then that they would have access to what they needed online. Also, the CS50 professionals wrote an AI that offers a 24-hour teacher guidance to be able to scaffold the information, explain information and the learnings to the students, and having clear understanding of how this worked, and that this was available to them was also something that was necessary. And I think the big question is, was this program a success? Absolutely, it was a success. We went from applications of 400 or 500 to choosing 150 the first year to applications that were much higher the second year, and having 272 students finish the program this last year, and continued conversations about what will happen in the future, and knowing that there is great interest. I think there are so many different levels of a success if you're going to measure this. And some of this is anecdotal, with data still needing to come in. But to have 3 organizations, to have a university, a government entity, and an international school all work together in collaboration for the well-being of educators in the world, I think is a really profound statement. I think that this says something about what we can do in support of education and changing the lives of people and the options that people have going forward, changing the young student in an Indonesian school that wants to learn something about computer science, and being able to have access to a teacher who understands this and can teach it to them. That's very significant. What we also know is that the Indonesian teachers shared that the level of content, the methodology, and the collaboration from the fellows at CS50 was profound, that they learned so much, and that they felt more confident leaving the program than entering the program, so that they could have the information they needed and the methodology. It wasn't just learning by themselves about what CS50 was about, but by having conversations about how do you effectively teach this content area to others? How do you engage in teaching and learning in a classroom? Having people of different nationalities and backgrounds work together for the well-being of something is really a wonderful thing. I think today, globally, it's needed to have those connections and the relationships. And what we know is that people from all over Indonesia, which is very diverse, as well as people from all over the US, came together to be able to put together a program that we didn't think would ever work 5 years ago. So, to be able to have those connections is critical. Teachers from Indonesia, those students, right? Those Indonesian teachers who were students then became teachers for their peers. What we know in schools is teachers teaching teachers is the best professional development that you can have. And this is something that we saw come to fruition through this program the last 2 years. What we also know is that there are curriculum changes in the local schools that these students, the Indonesian teachers, took it back to, that they are engaged in those conversations. What we also know is that the Ministry of Education has prioritized the importance of computer science and technology in Indonesia, the teaching of this and access of this for students nationally in that country. And of course, at the very end, what we want is an increase of knowledge, methodologies, and policy change for the well-being of young students who are going into school, who could one day choose their profession or one day make influence, have influence on others about what they have learned. So again, to summarize, the first year we had 150 teachers that worked online with the CS50 group, and then also came to our campus for the culminating last class and workshops. The second year, we had 300 teachers, and 272 was the last number of those who completed the program. And we are now in conversation about what this next year will look like. What we know is that the participants, the students, really felt honored to be chosen. And I think that this is something that should not be taken lightly, that the Ministry of Education in Indonesia chose a subset of teachers from many applications. And then those teachers also worked with the best in the world on CS50, Dr. Malin, as well as all the teaching fellows, is an honor that I think they will always have. And so this was a very meaningful and impactful movement for them professionally, as well as the schools that they represented, the schools that they go back to share their knowledge. What we know, of course, is that the applications continue to rise for this program, and we certainly hope that we can provide this type of professional development for educators in Indonesia and worldwide in support of education for young children and young learners. So for the future, how do we measure this? This is something that we need to look at. What are the changes in curriculum in Indonesia? How is CS50 being written into curriculum in the middle school and high school? We know that in the universities, there's been some slow changes, and they really have wanted to have more and more traction in this, but all of it is very reliant on having the professionals be able to teach this. And with the help of our colleagues at CS50, we're so happy to call them colleagues, we know that profound change has been made in Indonesia. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maya. So what's next for us in outreach? We want to continue to bring quality CS education to all. We want to continue to reach out to individual teachers, schools, both K-12 schools and higher education, universities. We want to reach out to districts, school districts, and governments. As Maya said, replicating this model really made for a dynamic, high impact, and efficient model that we hope to see in the future. So again, thank you all. This will conclude the recorded portion of the workshop, and Maya and I will take any questions. We can take them from the chat. We can, if you want to go on Zoom and say ask your question, we can do that. It would be great if you turn on your video. So we're happy to take any questions.